Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to my channel. My name is Dr. Tom LaHue. We're going to be looking at Enneagram Type 6 today, and we're going to be looking at the mental health of Type 6. Now, this information comes from an Instagram post from a good friend of mine, Tyler Zock, who is over at The Gospel for Enneagram. I put a link in the description below to his Instagram channel. He's a friend of mine, so I reached out to him and I said, hey, would you mind if I took these Instagram posts and turned them into videos? And he said, go for it. So really good stuff. So we're going to take a second and we're going to just look through these 8 or 9 different points about Type 6. And if you have a Type 6 in your life or you are a 6, welcome to the channel, and I hope that this video will be encouraging to you. Just as a reminder, in the description below is a link to my website, tomlahue.com, where you can book Enneagram coaching appointments or a coaching plan. And I'm just here to come alongside of you and encourage you and help you in any way I can. Sometimes life can get overwhelming and you need to talk through what's going on in your life or your relationship. And the Enneagram is a fantastic tool to help us be more compassionate with ourselves, but also to show up in relationships in a way that's more loving and more compassionate. It's amazing how quick we can get over the over the problem when we use the Enneagram in marriage coaching. Also, I do offer a lot of classes, Enneagram classes and certificates in Enneagram coaching and other things. And those are all on my website. I'd love to have you sign up for one of those classes. A lot of them are on demand, but I also do live classes on Zoom as well. If you go to my website right now and enter your email address, I have a free mini course for you. And I'd love for you to download that and go through the information. I'm sure it will encourage you. All right, so let's jump into this today, and I'm looking at the Instagram post as I'm talking to you. I didn't spend a ton of time, really working over this. I thought, let's just look at it and read it together and talk about it and see what comes up. And so on Type 6, he has several mental health issues or mental health outcomes of Type 6, and so let's just break those apart and talk about them and see what comes to our mind. And the first one he lists is something you know all too well, is the potential for worst case scenario thinking. And what is worst case scenario thinking? Well, he says constantly anticipating and worrying about potential dangers or worst case scenarios is a common experience for me. And so what he does is he lists all of these points out that kind of describe some of the challenges that 6s have. And, and I've looked through the comments of the people that have read through these, and he's got a lot of interest in this. 667 likes at this point. And most of the people agree. Most of the people that, responded said, yes, this is 100% me. And so worst case scenario thinking. You could also say like the glass is half empty. And how does this impact you? Is this something that you struggle with? Or is this something you notice in your partner who's a Type 6? This tendency to sort of look at things from a what could go wrong perspective, or the Murphy's Law perspective, if something could go wrong at will. Now, this isn't all bad, it is great to have these kinds of people on your team. If they don't allow this to become so detrimental that we can't move forward. And this you could easily see where at some point you have to decide, okay, well, we have done all we can do. We've made all the preparations we can make, and now we're going to have to just take a step forward. We're going to have to take a risk. And you can never be 100% sure of any adventure or I should say venture that you're going into. There's always going to be some potential risk or some potential problems. And you don't want this worst case scenario thinking to be so overwhelming that we can't make a decision and we can't move forward. Now, I'm a 7 wing 6, so I'm pretty close to 6. I got a lot of 6ness about me, but I am a 7, and 7s tend to be glasses half full, visionary, this is possible, let's be positive thinking. And you can see that as a 6, you have this 7 wing right next to you that you want to lean into that energy a little bit and say, okay, maybe things aren't as bad as I project that they are. Maybe I'm just a 6, feeling the stuff that 6s feel and struggling with the things that 6s struggle with. And I need to realize that if I'm 75% or 80% sure, then that's sure enough to take the next step. So again, it's good to have people like this on our team who can forecast ahead and plan ahead and make sure that the rest of us pay attention to the details and really think through our decisions before we start taking action. But you can see that this could become a problem. So worst case scenario thinking. I'm curious, is that something that has been a blessing to you? Or is that something that has made relationships and jobs and life more challenging for you? I imagine it may be a little bit of both. Okay, let's see what the next one is. Panic attacks. So number 2 on this list is panic attacks. Panic attacks. We all know that feeling, I think, of like fear, especially, I mean, I do, and I'm not a 6, but 7-wing 6. I know that flush of anxiety or that fear that something's going wrong or that something is, a problem. My son he's had some health issues and it's led to seizures. And, in the middle of the night, we get an alert on our phone that he's had a seizure or he's having one. And it's funny because I am not the best under pressure. I tend to have a panic attack, when that alert goes off. I just get up and run, and I'm not always the most productive in an emergency. And what I've noticed about 6s is 6s tend to be pretty calm and cool during an emergency. It's kind of like when everything's going fine, that's when 6s could be a little bit nervous, like something's going on. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the problem is, but I know there's something out there that needs us to pay attention to it. And when that thing actually presents itself, 6s tend to be okay because as long as I can see the problem or as long as I can see what the difficulty or the emergency is or who the enemy is, 6s tend to be okay with that. It's just knowing there's something about to go wrong or knowing that there's something not right, but not being able to put your finger on it or not being able to see your enemy can create great, challenges or trouble for a 6. Here's what he writes about panic attacks. He says, being extra sensitive to potential threats or having experienced or witnessed a traumatic event, I may be susceptible to panic attacks. I think there's a point here that all of us, regardless of our Enneagram type, have all witnessed traumatic events. We've all maybe been in a car accident or witnessed a car accident. We've all fallen off of a bicycle. There's all kinds of things that we've all witnessed. But I think with 6s, you have this very active mind that runs these scenarios, of like, well, what if that could happen to me? What if that? And I think there's a lot of worse things to tell a 6, but one of the worst things to tell a 6 is you're safe, or I'm going to keep you safe, because you're not really safe in this world. I mean, we don't live in the Garden of Eden. We live outside of Eden. And this world, there's always dangers and threats. There's always crime and threats, disease and sickness. And you could, with the economy, the way it goes up and down, we could all lose our jobs. And so those threats are real. And I think as a 6, you have this sharp mind like a 5, but if you're not careful, your mind might over focus on kind of like worst case scenario or spiraling thinking. And of course, what is that going to lead to? If we sit and think about everything that could go wrong and we think about what difficulties or challenges might be in front of us, it could very easily lead to this kind of problem, a panic attack. Now, I looked up panic attacks because I thought, okay, have I ever had a panic attack? I don't think I have. But I kind of looked it up and got some information about panic attacks. A panic attack is a sudden episode of intense fear or anxiety. Sounds like when I was a kid in high school and they would say, Mr. Menzer, is Tommy LaHue in your classroom? Can you please send him down to the principal's office? Triggers severe physical reactions even when there's no real physical present danger. or apparent cause. Panic attacks can be very frightening, and when panic attacks occur, you might think you're losing control or having a heart attack or even dying. I think I've seen some people, have panic attacks, and, it is frightening. I mean, you can tell that, they are very scared, and everybody around them becomes afraid. So rapid pounding heart rate, sweating, trembling or shaking, shortness of breath, tightness in the throat, chills, hot flashes, nausea, abdominal cramping. Sounds kind of like the last family reunion. Chest pains, headache, dizziness, lightheadedness, faintness, numbness, tingling sensation, feeling of unreality or detachment, or feeling almost like you're coming out of your body or like you're watching yourself. You might even have the fear of dying, like you feel like you're dying or you're going to die. People grab your arm and say, tell my kids I love them. And you're like, you're fine, you're okay. Panic attacks typically begin suddenly and without warning. They can strike at any time. When you're driving a car, at the mall, shopping, sound asleep, in the middle of a business meeting. You may have occasional panic attacks, or they could occur frequently. Now here's some ideas of what you can do to help yourself during a panic attack, or something, to be prepared if somebody around you is having a panic attack. Deep breathing. You always think of the person giving you that little lunch bag, and breathing into the bag and, trying not to hyperventilate and blowing off too much carbon. But deep breathing, during a panic attack, your breathing can become shallow. And so focus on slowing down your breathing or taking deep breaths. Grounding techniques, trying to focus on the physical world around you and maybe pulling people back to the moment. Like, what do you see? What do you smell? And look around at your reality. You're okay. Get a drink of water. When you were a little kid, everything was fixed with get a drink of water. And that getting a drink of water, it sounds ridiculous, but it does kind of ground you because, in that moment, you're overwhelmed with what has happened or what could happen. And then, getting that drink of water brings you back to the moment. It slows your breathing down too. So maybe our grandparents had something there with the old get a drink of water routine. Recognize and accept what's happening. Acknowledge that you are experiencing a panic attack and not a heart attack, or a stroke or something. Remind yourself this is temporary. You're going to be okay. It's going to pass. Use muscle relaxation techniques. Visualize your happy place. Or maybe use a mantra saying this is going to pass, or I everything's okay, or I'm in control, or maybe count backwards or something. But panic attacks. Okay, what does he have next? Obsessive thoughts. Obsessive thoughts. Now, this is something as a 7 I think we share with you. It might be a little nuanced, a little differently. Obsessing about something, or obsessing I want to do something, or there's something out there that I don't have that I want to add to my collection. But here's way it's stated for a 6. My tendency toward anxiety and a desire for certainty and security makes me more prone to obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors. My tendency toward anxiety and a desire for certainty and security makes me more prone to obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors. I'd be interested in hearing you guys, comment on this, because I'm not exactly sure I'm following this, but I'm sure every one of you 6s go, oh yeah, I know what he's saying. But that desire for everything to be okay, for everything to work out, for there to not be dangers or threats, could make me be a little compulsive. Like, I need to go talk to that person, or I need to go deal with this, or I need to go confront this person. 6s, 8s, and 2s are all in the confrontational group together. We need to go talk to this person. We need to go have it out. We need to go get our coalition together and go confront this person. I don't know. I'm just interested. I'm not as familiar with this point. And I would love to hear maybe some of you 6s, give your perspective on that. All right, so next is analysis paralysis. And this one I know all too well. I've got enough of a 6-wing that I totally understand this, and it frustrates me. It drives me crazy. But let me read what he says here. My tendency to overthink and second guess myself and be indecisive can result in procrastination, analysis paralysis, and a feeling of being trapped or unable to move forward. Now, I think 7s and 6s, I know this isn't a video on 7s, but I can't help it. I see the world from my perspective. But I know with a 7, it's like I have a problem with choosing one thing is eliminating all the other options. And so it can be hard to choose one thing. I remember being as a kid, you know, my aunt taking me to a candy store and she's saying, pick something. And that's hard. Pick something. If I pick, you know, the licorice, then I'm leaving the, you know, the Red Hots. If I pick the Red Hots, I'm leaving the Sweet Tarts. If I pick the Sweet Tarts, I'm leaving the chocolate. And so when you're a glutton and you're 5 years old, it's hard to make decisions sometimes because I don't want to make a bad decision. Now, my wife is a 2, and she was talking about, we were talking about this one time, and she said, you know, something similar. She said, I would have a hard time, like, buying a baby doll because I didn't want the other doll's feelings to be hurt. Think about that. Like, as a little kid, you know, you can buy a baby doll, you can buy a Barbie doll, and looking at all those dolls and thinking, I don't know if I can take one off the shelf because the other ones might be sad. The other dolls, right? They're plastic. But, and as a 7, I just wanted all of them. You know, if I was going to get one G.I. Joe, I wanted all the G.I. Joes. How can I leave, you know, Snake Eyes behind and take Sergeant Slaughter? I want all of them. You know, I want the entire collection. And I'm sure those toy companies, you know, are glad that some of us are wired that way so they can keep selling their junk, their plastic junk to us. Analysis paralysis. Let's take this one for a minute because this one really is challenging. You want to move forward, you want to make decisions, you want to take action, but you're stuck and caught up in, not that you're lazy, right? It's not that you're lazy. It's not that you know, won't take responsibility. It's, if anything, it's like you're too responsible. Like you're so responsible, you're so concerned that you have a hard time settling your mind and settling in on one course of action because what do we not know, or what else, you know, is left undecided. And so I wrote down some things to help with this one as well. These are the only 2 I'm going to spend a little extra time on because I don't know why. I just, maybe they connected more with me, and I don't know, but this one I felt like, you know, this one's so frustrating and it traps us and then we can't move forward. Analyzing. Let's see what it says. Analysis paralysis happens when you overthink a situation. Look at that. The 6s in the thinking group, right? 5, 6, and 7. Overthinking a situation. And that kind of tells you everything you need to know, that there are plenty of people out there that don't overthink things. And you know what? Oftentimes life works out okay for them. So sometimes rather than thinking about it or planning it, you know, maybe we should just take action. Just say, well, I know enough to know to start taking action. Or know when you know enough to make a decision to start taking action. Just realize there's like 8s, for example, they're not going to sit around. They don't want to sit around and talk about it and think about it and analyze it. It's like they're just going to start picking up mops and buckets and start moving forward, start taking action. And it's no wonder they end up leaders, because they're willing to just step out there and trust their gut. And I know, I mean, we wish we could, right? Trust our gut a little more. But overthinking a situation so much that you become paralyzed and can't make a decision or take action. And of course, that's not a good course of action. Doing nothing, being paralyzed, that's not going to look like leadership. And it's not that you're a bad person. You're a great person. You're really trying to think things through, and that is a wonderful characteristic, a wonderful quality. But at some point, you know, you got to go out of your office and you have to announce what the decision is. And just, do you feel the anxiety with just that thought of like, I have to make a decision. I have to go out and I have to say, hey team, we are going to choose left and we're not choosing right, or we're going to choose green and we're not choosing red. And you could go back in your office and you could spend this all day long, you know, am I making the right decision? Do I have all the information? How are people going to respond to this? What happens if it fails? Who are they going to blame? This could go on and on forever, but if you do nothing, you know what's going to happen, right? Nothing good is going to come from that. So it's a common problem, but here's some strategies we can use to try to overcome analysis paralysis. Number one, limit your options. Look at that. Now that right there is part of the problem for a 7, is limit your options. When your sin is gluttony, you don't want to limit your options. You want to say yes and, yes and, yes and. Not, okay, I'm excluding, 39 options to choose and select one option. I can remember when I was a little kid, my brother and I, he's a 1-wing 9, and kind of that perfectionistic, mindset. My mom and dad would take us to an ice cream place. I think it was Baskin Robbins, back when people went to Baskin Robbins. And we went to an ice cream place every once in a while, and we would look up and down the all of the options, and can I taste this? Can I taste that? Can I taste this? And then I would always end up with the dumbest option. I would end up with it's almost like I stepped into the trap of little kid, it was like, oh, they have one called Superman. I'm taking that one. I want Superman. I like Superman. So I'd get Superman, boom, that fast. And then my brother, a 1-wing 9, who could get stuck in this analysis stuff, back and forth, can I taste this? Can I taste that? Can I taste this? And it would take him, 3 times as long to select something. And then every time he'd end up with French vanilla. Okay, so choosing one flavor and eliminating 30 other flavors can be real challenging for some of us. So limit your options. If you're considering a wide range of options, it's easy to get caught up in the nuances of each one and seeing the benefit of each one. Try to narrow your choices down to a more manageable number and say, okay, I don't need 10 different fragrances. What if I just selected between 3? What if I just selected between those 3? Sometimes adding, and I can tell you this from experience, guys, sometimes adding more options creates more anxiety. I mean, think about it. If you were a minimalist, and this is what's so interesting, is like 7s, gluttons, and then 5s down there often are the minimalist. If you go on YouTube and you start watching videos on minimalism, I've tried because, I want to be proactive in the fight against gluttony. But when I watch these videos on minimalism, most of these people are 5s. 5s tend to either be minimalists or hoarders. They're somewhere on that spectrum, a lot of times on that line. It's kind of like 5 stuff, that greed, that stinginess, and not wanting to need stuff, not wanting to need things or to be dependent on things. But one of the benefits that I see from minimalism is reducing anxiety. Is, when you have 50 different pocket knives and you rotate through those, if you guys go on YouTube and look at reviews on items, like just take pocket knives, for example, something ridiculous like that, and just say, I want to watch reviews on pocket knives. Those people will 9 times out of 10 be 7s. Now there's a lot of 6s, because 6s, when it comes to everyday carry, 6s are the masters, right? 6s, they've got ponchos in their purses in case it rains. They've got 3 or 4 pocket knives. They've got a tourniquet they wear around their arm, what is that cord, that you can, again, you never know when I might need to rappel down a mountain. I've got my paracord right here, around my wrist. But a lot of the people on YouTube that are reviewing items and collecting stuff are 7s. And when you look at, I saw a guy the other day on one of these videos, and he had a tool chest, like those red shelves with like 10 shelves in it, and all of them were filled with pocket knives, because he has a rotation, of 100+ pocket knives. And a lot of these are expensive. whatever, spend your money however you want. But just realize that when you wake up in the morning and you go to grab a pocket knife, when you have one pocket knife or maybe two, there's no anxiety there. You just grab your pocket knife, you put it in your pocket, and you go to work. But when you have to stop and you have to open up all the drawers, and let's see, do I want the mahogany pocket knife with the inlaid, eagle crest? Do I want the Harley pocket knife with the little motorcycle skull? Do I want just realize this adds to the anxiety. So limiting options can be, and I'm talking from somebody who has to preach to myself about this, can be a great way to kind of help us get through this analysis paralysis. Set a deadline. Give yourself a specific timeline for making the decision. Say, I'm going to set a timer, and in 20 minutes, I'm going to make a decision. Okay? Or I'm going to stop thinking about this in 20 minutes. One of the best books I could recommend to you as a 6 is the book Don't Sweat the Small Stuff by Dr. Richard Carlson. And all of his books, and his wife's books, I think he is a type 9. And remember, 6s integrate to 9. And that whole concept of like letting the small stuff go and not over analyzing things and not getting too frustrated with stuff. It's such a healing message for you guys. Set a deadline. Don't seek perfection. Perfection is really just a misnomer. I've got a course on demand on my website called Giving Up on Being Perfect, and it's where I just kind of go through all of this information about perfectionism and how it can really, mess us up and keep us from getting stuff done. When good enough is good enough. Know when you know it enough, when you've got enough information, when the paper is complete. Yes, you could always add to it. Yes, you could always revise it. Yes, you could always, but there's something to be said about turning it in, about just handing it in and getting it done. And think of the peace that you'll have when you get it done. So don't seek perfection. Identify the risks and ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? It's so funny. I do a lot of coaching, and I coach a lot of 6s and a lot of 9s, but it's so funny that, this is kind of one of the scenarios I see all the time. You're at a job you hate. You're at a job where you don't like the people. You don't feel supported. You don't feel like you're a part of the team. You feel like this company is not, run effectively. And yet you're losing sleep all the time about what they think about you and how your work is going. And to me, it's so interesting that you're losing sleep in anxiety, worried about a job you can't stand and are almost ready to quit. So I think, let me just say that again, identify the risk. What's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen? You are already miserable in this job, or you're already miserable in this relationship. And so why so much energy, placed in trying to keep this okay or keep this people happy when you already hate this job? Maybe it's time to quit this job. Maybe it's time to, to end this relationship and move on. Okay, trust your gut. Wow. That one we could talk about for a day, right? Trusting your gut. I think there's one of the points he's going to bring up that we'll talk about that in a minute. Take small steps. If the decision is large and feels overwhelming, break it down into smaller, more manageable parts. You can make progress tackling the small parts of the decision, and then seek an outside perspective, which I think 6s tend to do that anyway. What do you think, Dr. Tom? Does this make sense? What do you think? I don't want to make a decision until I talk it out with my crew and, and somebody who can support me. And really remember, the fear of the 6 is being without assurance, without loyalty, without support. And that's one of the things that you give as a 6. You give loyalty and support. And the very thing you seek in life is what you provide for others. And it's true of all the Enneagram types. It's fantastic truth. Okay, what do we got so far? Let's review. Let's go back and let's take a second. Let's make sure we don't skip anything here. So worst case scenario thinking, panic attacks, obsessive thoughts, analysis paralysis. Is this list starting to bother you already? You're like, why is this us? Why couldn't this be 2s or 3s or something? Why isn't everybody like this? That's the way we tend to think when we hear stuff like this, is, doesn't everybody struggle with this? I mean, fear is a real thing. Doesn't everybody struggle with this? Well, okay, and then the next one is trusting myself. trusting myself. You know, sixes are often looking for people in their life that they can trust. One of the reasons is because I know I can't trust myself. Now, it doesn't mean you can't trust yourself to do the right thing. It just means when making a decision, when trying to figure things out, you kind of know what you think should be done, but there's a part of you that's holding out like, maybe I don't have all the information, or maybe I'm not seeing this thing correctly. I need an outside perspective to reinforce what I already believe. So here's the statement that is listed on Instagram. Trusting myself is an ongoing struggle, especially in light of past traumatic experiences, like when I screwed up, I think is what he's saying. You know, if you've ever screwed up and you thought, oh, I should have known better. I knew it. You know, there's the eights, you know, obligated to be against, right? Whatever it is. And then there's the sixes obligated to doubt whatever's going on. I knew it. I should have gone with my instinct on this. So that feeling that I blew it in the past and that's not going to happen again. They're not going to get me the next time. Shame on me if they get me the next time. I often find myself evaluating my own judgments against the advice and opinions of others, which can lead to feeling overwhelmed by diverse perspectives or excessively influenced by religious tradition. And really, you got to be careful as sixes. I mean, you guys are the cult, okay? And you need to know that about your type, is that you tend to seek out that leader, you know, that's going to keep us safe, who uses only this version of the Bible, and, you know, he's going to protect us from all of them out there. And if you're not careful, like this six thinking could lead you down a destructive path. And then feeling overwhelmed by diverse perspectives. Like you might really feel like you've wrapped up what you believe, and then you hear 4 or 5 other people talking. You're like, okay, now I'm more confused than ever. I do all this research. I do all of this, you know, surfing on the internet to find all this information. And by the time I'm done, I have more questions than I have answers. Okay, if that's the way you feel, guess what? You're probably a 6. You know, I was a pastor for 30 years. I'm still pastoring part-time at a church plant. But, you know, I've pastored for 30 years, and I think back to, you know, those people that would, Pastor, I don't understand. Why do we have a Christmas tree in the sanctuary? I don't like that. That's pagan. And you're like, it's a Christmas tree. Okay, none of us are pagans. None of us are going to suddenly become pagans. You know, like think Scandinavian, old Britannia pagans, Germany, wherever this tradition of trees in your house being lit on fire came from, is really not a part of the typical American Christmas, right? I mean, most of us just have a tree for decorations. We put presents under it, and most of us would think this is completely harmless. Yes, I know that there is pagan or background to Christmas trees, but I don't think anybody in our church is going to look at a Christmas tree and say, oh, you know, I think I should become pagan. And, you know, those people that bring those issues, are sixes. Why? Because they're vigilant. Sixes, you guys are like the watchman on the tower, you know. Everybody else is asleep. Everybody else seems to just go to sleep, but somebody needs to stay vigilant. Somebody needs to look over the horizon and make sure that everything's okay. And, you know, that thinking brain of yours forecasts and projects all kinds of things that could happen. And then when it happens, wave the banner and blow the trumpets and wake everybody up. And this is a wonderful thing. I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's just knowing when it is time to do that, and when this is one of those issues where this isn't anything I need to worry about. I need to just let this go. And remember, at your best, you look like a 9, right? At your best, you're like, this isn't a big deal. This will work itself out. This is not something to worry about. This is not something I need to give any more attention to. And the more attention I give to it, the worse it's going to get. But 6s under stress look like a 3, trying to outrun, overperform, pull away from the group and prove themselves and their worth and value. You know, don't fire me, fire them. They're the ones that don't follow the rules. They're the ones that are not filling out all the forms. And so 6s under stress will start to look like a 3 in those ways. Okay, so trusting myself. Next, being separated.
Being separated from my security, i.e. my safety net. And what is that? That's be interesting to think about that. Have you formalized in your mind what your safety net is? It can lead to an overwhelming fear of worst case scenario, causing me to spiral into pessimism. So is your safety net your friends? Is it the people that you have on speed dial? By the way, if your list of emergency contacts is longer than your grocery list, you might be a 6. Okay, so being separated from my security or my safety net, is that your church group? Is that your small group? Is that your community group? Your friends at work? Your sorority? Your fraternity? What is that? Too much change. Now, a lot of people love change, and look, 7s right next to you are kind of change agents, but too much change can disrupt my sense of stability, routine, and predictability. And this is something I think a lot of, 6s and 1s kind of share in common. 6s and 1s could look a lot alike for some reasons, And notice there's no connection between you guys, between 6 and 1, because you guys are very similar already. Too much change can disrupt my sense of stability, routine, and predictability. What do 7s hate? Routine, stability, and predictability. Leading to heightened stress levels and feelings of insecurity. So you like things to remain the same. You like it predictable. You like to know what's coming. Now, that doesn't mean you don't like a spark of pizzazz, you like something. But how do you feel about surprises? Just think about that. Do you like surprises? Or do surprises cause a certain level of anxiety within you, just thinking about them? Or somebody saying, hey, we're going to have a new software system. All the corporate is sending it to us. We need to all be prepared and ready to transition for our new software system. Do you start to feel like, maybe I should quit? Maybe it's time to retire? Okay, 2 more. Navigating expectations. Other people's expectations on you. How does that make you feel? Navigating the expectations, whether communicated or unspoken, within relationships or work becomes a significant source of internal conflict for me. Balancing my own aspirations and expectations of others can create a sense of tension and uncertainty, which can impact my emotional well-being. Navigating other people's expectations. Because the reality is you don't want to let them down. You want to do good work. You want people to think well of you. I was talking to my daughter the other night. She's a 6-wing 7 and she's 15 years old. And she talked about, being in class, and she said, oh, every teacher, I'm their favorite. Or I'm in the top 3. I'm in the top 2 or top 3. Every teacher I've had, their favorite. I think 2s and 6s, that's probably something you guys share. Like I want to know that the teacher likes me. I want to know that I'm safe in that environment. I want to know that this teacher is going to treat me right. And I laughed and I said, yeah, because if you're not their favorite, then you are going to turn the classroom against them. And that's very 6-like thinking. Like, I either need to know that I'm your best favorite student, or I will turn this entire class against you. Now, that might be overstating a little bit, but you get the humor in it. Navigating expectations. And then the last is authority figures. Authority figures. You love them and you hate them. You love them and you want a trustworthy, reliable authority figure, yet there's a big part of you that is going to challenge and question authority. You guys are the investigative reporters. I hate to tell you, 6-wing 5s especially, you guys are I don't know if you remember the old generation of investigative reporters, the John Stossels, right? The Glenn Becks, the Mark Levins, the people that are going to get to the bottom of this, and what are they not telling you? What are they not telling us? And so authority figures can be pretty triggering. If you love Trump or you hate Trump, the reality is most 6s are going to keep their eyes on him. Like either he's the guy that's going to save us all, or he's the guy that we need to watch and we need to pay attention to this, and this person can't be trusted. Just notice as a 6, like how you tend to interact with authority figures. Loving them, respecting them, wanting them, yet questioning them, challenging them, and standing up to them should they misuse or abuse their position of authority. My experience with bad authority figures who engage in abusive behavior can have long-lasting psychological consequences for me, including PTSD
depression, anxiety disorders, or difficulties with trust and self-esteem. So, let's look at that list again. Let me just go back and hit them again. Okay, worst case scenario, panic attacks. Sounds fun, right? Obsessive thoughts, analysis paralysis, problems trusting myself, anxiety in terms of being separated from my support group or from my team. Too much change creates anxiety. Navigating the expectations of others and trying to live up to those expectations while sometimes they're in conflict with my own wants, needs, and desires. And then the whole problem with authority figures. And again, now if we can understand all this about ourselves, let's have more compassion for ourselves and realize, wow, I do a lot of this sick stuff, you know. And one of the best things you can do is tap yourself on the head and sort of laugh at yourself in these moments and say, I'm such a 6. I'm not bad. I'm not doing something wrong. I'm just a 6 feeling the stuff that 6s feel. And maybe I could push back a little on those impulses, and even though I'm feeling the fear, I don't need to necessarily, or the anxiety, I don't necessarily need to let it get the best of me. I have support. I have people around me that love me and want me to succeed. And I need to take steps and need to move forward, even though there's a part of me that's not sure. And worst case scenario is, even if all of this falls apart, I might at the most lose my job. But you know, I'm a smart person. I'm a very capable person. I've got a lot of friends, and I'm sure that if the worst thing happened, I lost my job, or I lost my relationship, or just think the worst thing, I would be okay. I really would be okay. I believe that God would be there for me. I believe that the people that I've invested in would be there for me. And when I'm backed up against a wall, I am able to figure things out. And you are. Look, you guys are the problem solvers on the Enneagram. So you tend to see problems even when they aren't there. And realize this, that sometimes the best solution to the problem is realizing there's not really a problem here. And many times there's not. And if there is, sometimes the problems are not anything we can really do much about. Sometimes we just have to learn to accept life as it is. And realize that if you were backed against the wall, and the worst case scenario, let's just say it this way. If the worst thing happened and we were all backed against the wall, I would want you on my team. Because you're a problem solver and you're capable. And you need to believe that about yourself. And life will be a lot better for you when you do believe that about yourself. You're able to overcome these obstacles. You're able to think your way through these problems. And you're able to accept life as it is. If you need some help or some encouragement along the way, please reach out to me. I love doing coaching appointments with people. And if I can help you in any way, I'll be your friend. Okay? So as always, I'll see you next time. And guys, be present to life.